Okay, welcome to work, everybody. Today my presentation is on Bluebird. Bluebird is a promise library for JavaScript in the Node. Right here, this is the tag lifted off their GitHub page. Full-featured promise library with focus on innovative features and performance. Bluebird was created by Petka Antonov. There's a link right there to his GitHub account. Let's go ahead and let's do a little refresher. What's a promise? Somebody tell me what a promise is? Okay. Promises are software abstraction that makes working with asynchronous operations much more pleasant. I'm not going to go into big detail of it. If you need to know more, there's some links to some good places. Notice the last one. Google it. Do your own research. And that is the end of my presentation. I appreciate everyone coming out. Now, that's a link to the GitHub repository and then the API reference. The rest of the time, we're going to be going through code and looking at what these promises can do. So let's switch over. This is just a quick overview here of what I've got in the repository. It's basically a Node project. These are the scripts available that we can run. Over in this window, we're going to keep alive running test run while we watch. Right now, everything's green because everything does work and is green. But we got some playing around to do in here. First, we're going to take a look at some simple promises. User repository. So basically, all we're saying is get the user by ID. Some of my naming isn't too great here. I was in a rush creating this last night. Don't pay attention to that delay line that's commented out right now. That's just a way to for me to fake some asynchronicity, like making a call to the database or whatever. That's normally what you'd be doing here, making a request. All this is going to do is when you call the get.user, it's going to return a promise that when resolved is going to return a user with the same ID you asked for and my first and last name. Pretty simple, straightforward, nothing much to look at. So let's take a look at the test. Test, all we do is call it, and then once it's returned, we get that user object back. And all I'm doing is making sure that the first name matches the last name and the ID matches what I expected. That's just hard-coded for now. And over in the TDD output, you can see that the first name is correct, last name is correct, and the ID is correct. Those of you not familiar, I'm using tape as the test framework. It's pretty quick, simple, fast. Next, we have got a locality, which just gives us localities. It's the same thing. It returns an object to us with the promises resolved. And once again, the delay is added for effect. And then the same type of test. The Utah locality and make sure it returns that hard-coded object. You'll notice that the test duration in the TDD window over here is at 935 milliseconds. So let's go ahead and fake like we've got some sort of call to a database here. Change has happened. Now we'll kick off the test run again. You notice we took 5.3 seconds now because we delayed for what, 1.5 seconds? before we continued on that test. Let's add a little more time to that. Yeah, this.
There it goes.
You know, it took 5.8 seconds, so we're getting somewhere. Know that we're doing that. Next up, there's a nice feature called join that it is capable of, and you're able to, as it implies, join multiple asynchronous calls as long as it's promise that is being sent in. So the join accepts an infinite amount of localities, and then promises, and then a function that will take care of the results. You'll need one parameter per each promise that you've called. So when it's resolved, it will call it, eventually call into this function with the parameters. And then here I've just set it up to return an object with properties that match what we're looking for. And all I did was leverage our little simple user and localities libraries to make these calls. And as you can see, we call the get info, which does that results. And then here's the result objects, which is the, you can see just, it's got the user and the locale property, and then the properties underneath them. Now, part of the weird thing is with that join is, if you wanted to return something off it, you have to manipulate it and send it back. Like I had to send that back as an object with the properties assigned. There is actually a built-in not overload, but function that allows you to map these easier. And it's the props keyword are here. And it allows you to pass in an object with the properties, and then the actual values of those are the promise calls that you're making. And once resolved, it'll return that object with the values instantiated for those properties. So then we just, once the properties, these two promises are resolved, we'll call the then with the result. An object that is the exact same as what we just saw in the last join. Pretty much the exact same test, just calling it on a different module. This next thing is also one of the things that I really love about this. We have await async capability from within this promise library using the coroutine. So here we're just setting up a little friendly game of ping pong. You call ping with a value, it will then call pong, and that will play back and forth. Never ending until you kill it. But as you can see, we've got the yield returns, and they return a delay of 5 milliseconds, 500 milliseconds. It's actually pretty cool. And then each time it happens, when it actually gets the call back and forth, we print to the console. So let's go ahead and run this. And as you can see, you just keep ping-ponging, and the next one doesn't happen until the async, the await and async. Very similar to the way C# does it with the task parallel library. So that's, I thought that was pretty cool to have in JavaScript. Next, we have What do we have? Okay, showing you everything except the using. The using example, I'm a little short on. I wasn't quite able to get it running. But what that does is resource management. So if you get a connection, some sort of asynchronous value, you're then able to, close that connection using a disposer and the using. So what we're trying to do here is I'm just showing that the when you call get connection, pass in a connection string, it alters it with the passed in value, and the user is altered. The defaults, are overwritten, and then once the resource is clean, they are reset to an empty object and an empty string. So like usually when you're making, call to a database or whatever from within Node, and you just keep opening in Postgres, you just keep opening it every time you call to get a connection, and you never actually close it. You'll run out of the connections, and you won't be able to connect to your database without taking it down. So it's important to, clean up your resources. Always has been. So test here, I attempted to get it going, and notice we've got skip there because it wasn't passing, so I didn't want to look too bad. And you'll notice that we've thrown type of errors. We've got the disposer function. It doesn't like the way I set that up. But the test here is just at the beginning, making sure the values are at the connection string, and the user name is the default values. And then you can see that we're using the using from within inside the promise library. We get the connection, passing in the new connection string, and then here we're verifying that the connection string was the new username, and it was the new connection string, and the username was what I had set previously in while it was using. Once this then is called, the dispose has happened, and that is what is returned then after. And everything should be reset to the default. So my problem is over in where I'm defining things, it's not working. But as you can see, the default values are there because we haven't altered anything yet. But not quite sure what we got there. So there are a lot of things that you can do in this Bluebird library. These are anything you can do with promises you can do. These are some of the, I think, better extensions they have on the promise libraries. Like the await and async is great. I think that's pretty cool. Using the resource management, I'm gonna try to get that working before I save the code and get everything up and going. But I know this is pretty quick and fast, and wondering if anybody's got any questions.
There's another cool function, .all, takes an array of promises and gives you the then when every single promise is resolved.
Yes.
Or it rejects, or it gives you an error.
They have that capability here as well.
So, yeah, that's part of Bluebird.
That's a standard promise. Yeah. And join and props are just additions to the all.
So how is join different from the all?
They recommend using the join over the all. In the API, he had some reference that the all sometimes returns an error that happens inside the library somewhere can get swallowed and not returned properly.
Oh yeah. Well, I've seen like if you do an all and like one
Yeah.
It's not that
Fails fast kind of thing.
Yeah.
that's where it's going. So I don't know, we'll return an error for each one.
Yeah, and there is, I should have included some examples on their error handling. They have a lot of error handling in here as well.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, so they've made extensions on the errors, and they've got their internal errors that are thrown from within the promise library, from this Bluebird promise library, and then it also some boilerplates on how to create your own errors and throw them and everything.
Is there any more advanced features you can think of that you just have time to demonstrate that are in Bluebird that can make it stand out? More than
They have a bind function that they rave about in their documentation on the API. And I
So, like, you can find what this would be.
yeah, you can what bind promises to other properties and everything. There's a lot you can do with it, and they have a pretty exhaustive examples there. And this ping pong example I actually lifted from them, from their API documentation, because I felt it was the cool way to show that.
You open up that using Node.js. You can look at it.
Yeah, sure.
Why is it?
Yeah. Line 10. So it is thinking
The
that.
things that we don't have a dispose.
So well, it's
So this-
saying that is not defined. So just instead of returning there, put it into a variable and then log out what that variable is.
The promising.
Yeah.
Here?
No. So just instead of the return new promise, get rid throw it into a variable. And then just semicolon before or at the end of that instead of the disclosure. Yep, and now just log out what promise is. I probably want to return promise too.
So we got a circular promise, it looks like.
I just wonder if you have to go into
Cannot
something else
set.
besides on, it's not on the promise, it's on what's the disclosure actually on.
Is this undefined then? Is the same?
Yeah,
This
this-
property.
It might be.
That's the issue.
Yeah.
Does ES6 give you something new? Or-
It's too low.
colon. New connection string colon CS and return an object.
It's not returning an object.
Oh, oh, because you're trying to set that.
So
Yeah.
if you just log out promise dot disposer, is it even?
Undefined.
Oh.
So
Do it in your lowercase b. So it's the actual
I got you.
On return by from the promise.
Okay.
So
So
what
the-
it's actually called.
The new promise,
Do you disclose? So disclose it?
possibly. I'm going to stop recording
Well,
and then we can take a look, all right?
okay.